The NBA playoffs are right around the corner, and with that come expectations, hope, but also disappointment. What are the biggest narratives heading into the playoffs for every contender? Welcome back to another wee bit different video. Today's video, we just talked about it, NBA narratives for every contender. For those of you who are wondering, what does contender, who qualifies for that? Of course, you have the Pistons, Celtics, Knicks on the East. I will still talk about the Cavs because they're a dark horse. And for those of you who want to hear about the Hawks, Magic, Sixers, and the narratives that are going on there, I'll do a quick one for those of you that are, interested in those. Same with the West. It's Thunder, Spurs, Nuggets. For the Detroit Pistons, it is pretty clear-cut and obvious. Can their regular season success translate to postseason success? We've seen it, and I've actually done a YouTube short earlier in the season talking about it. Young teams typically do not perform well in the playoffs. If you talk about the roster of the Pistons, you see Cade, you see Jalen, you see Oswar. Tobias is a little bit more seasoned. Duncan is a little bit more, or he's actually much more seasoned. He made the NBA Finals. But a lot of young guys on that roster who, let's be honest, the faces of that roster have not gotten, a whole lot of postseason experience. Some of you might be thinking, are you sure the narrative isn't, can Cade Cunningham answer the call? I would say it's more of a group thing, just because, again, the lack of experience from the faces being Jalen and Cade, and then your best defender, Oswar, same thing. How is he going to handle that pressure as well? For the Boston Celtics, this one's actually pretty straightforward as well. Can they go back to their peak Boston Celtics form? What do I mean by that? Back in their championship run, they did, and we don't talk about this enough, honestly. Granted, I don't think it's worth talking about, but they had a pretty easy schedule of playing injured teams and non-competitive. When I say non-competitive, I mean the standard that you expect in the playoffs is sometimes to face team after team who's really good, maybe with the exception of round one. The Boston Celtics, that entire run, didn't really face any challenges till the last. And then going into round two is where things get a lot more spicy. How are they going to handle the Knicks? They lost to the Knicks round two. That narrative of the Knicks this, the Knicks that, they always disappoint. Last year, they lost the Knicks round two. This is going to be an opportunity for them to get their get back, assuming the Knicks hold on to the 3 seed, right? But how are they going to respond to that loss? And is Jason Tatum going to be able to reach that form? So if I were to just put it all under one, so if I was to just label it, I would say, can they get back to their peak form? Okay, the narrative for the New York Knicks. This one, I got to tell you, I don't think this is very original at all, but can the Knicks stop getting in their own way? Honestly, I think that is the simplest way to put it. You talk about the roster of Jalen Brunson being clutch, but then you talk about other guys who show up and then don't show up, and then show up and don't show up. Can Mike Brown beat the allegations of not being the coach that the Knicks need? Honestly, it feels like the Knicks somehow managed to get in their own way, whether they do something that chokes away a lead, or maybe they, have a game where they really clutch up and then can't figure it out. There is always something to be had of the Knicks because they're a big market team, and there's always a lot of people talking about them, but can they get out of their own way? Honestly, Knicks versus Boston again. Boston's going to have the opportunity to get their revenge, and the Knicks are going to have an opportunity to prove themselves to be, staples in the East. And then we'll be a little bit quicker with this one. Cleveland Cavaliers are a dark horse, but let's be honest, the biggest narrative is this roster worth investing in even a little bit further, right? You talk about Donovan Mitchell being the cornerstone of this franchise, Jared Allen, Evan Mobley being big pieces, James Harden, whom they traded for, hoping that he could turn things around for this franchise and not having any success. Honestly, this is it. I would say if the Cavs don't have a successful playoff run, things are going to be very different in how we see this roster no matter what seed they are. They're not going to be believed upon, and their own franchise will have to have that discussion of, okay, how much longer before we say we got to do something just different? Raptors, I would say the Raptors is pretty straightforward. They lack a generational player. However, no matter how you see it, they invested in getting Brandon Ingram. They invested in getting RJ Barrett. They invested in getting Jakob Poeltl, building around Scottie Barnes as best as they can, having Emmanuel quickly. I mean, honestly, it's going to be a big question mark in terms of how they're going to do this playoff run. But you're able to see guys like Scottie be put in a position to where, okay, we're here. How are you going to perform as our best player? You're going to get a big taste of what the Toronto Raptors basketball is going to look like, with Scottie at the helm. But also, this is just very crucial experience. So to me, the narrative is simple. Your first taste in the playoffs, how does this squad perform? Atlanta Hawks, very simple as well. They're a team that, honestly, it's weird to say they're without Trae Young, but they're building around Jalen Johnson now. We got to get Jalen Johnson some reps in the playoffs. Let him know what NBA playoffs basketball is like. A lot of the Hawks, in my opinion, is evaluating to see how some of these guys perform in the big moments, right? Because let's be honest, they got a pick coming up that's going to be crucial from the Pelicans, and they got to evaluate how much more they're going to just invest into the current roster. And if the Hawks make even a slight run, you best believe it's going to be huge, and then they're going to throw everything they can at building around Jalen Johnson even more. Magic is simple. If Jamal Mosley doesn't do anything, he's getting fired. The narrative is Jamal Mosley going to keep his job or not? 76ers, I would say there's a clear-cut narrative. If Joel Embiid was healthy with the appendix thing, you really don't know how this is going to turn out. So I would say let's see how Tyrese Maxey and Paul George do. Let's see how our stars hold up. Let's see how Nick Nurse manages, the team. But if Joel Embiid was here, it would be a bit different. Hornets' narrative is simple. How much of a splash can they make, even if it's just in a single series? You got to see how LaMelo does, right? LaMelo has been dealing with injuries his whole career. If he can help lead this team to a very competitive first round against the Pistons or Celtics, that is going to greatly help next year in how you see this team and how you build around this team. Brandon Miller, LaMelo. That is the focus, the narrative for these guys. More importantly, though, is can LaMelo actually be a leader and see how he does in the playoffs? The Miami Heat, this one, I got to say, if they win the play-in and they actually make the playoffs, I don't know if there's any narrative other than, look, some years they're going to make a splash, some years they're not. They're not going to make a splash this year. Eric Spoelstra has tried, obviously, but they're without a player like Jimmy who can turn up in the playoffs. So is there even a narrative to be had? I don't know. I don't think so. Going into the West, the narrative around the OKC Thunder is who can beat them? Are they a dynasty? That's kind of what the narrative is going to be around OKC for a while now is are they a dynasty? Is Shea, J-Dub, Chet, and the rest of the roster, Sam Presti, are they making the city of Oklahoma a city with a dynasty? You talked about it with the Warriors and Warriors dynasty, 4 chips, very impressive. Thunder have been dominating, and they've been the first seed 3 years in a row now. The last 2 specifically in dominating fashion. Are they going to be a dynasty? If they win this year, if they have 2 chips under their belt, that's going to be a very valid question moving forward. Number 2, this one's actually a bit weird, and I know this might not be satisfactory for a lot of people, but the narrative to me is, can they actually do it? And what I mean by can they actually do it is, could they actually beat the Nuggets? Could they actually beat the Thunder? We know years down the road, Spurs are going to be a fixture of the NBA. They're going to be a mainstay. They're going to be a problem for years to come. The reason why I say down the road is because they got Stephon Castle, who's younger. They have Wembanyama. They have Dylan Harper, who's younger. They got a lot of young pieces, is my point. They have no experience. I talked about it with the Pistons. When you have no experience, historically speaking, you don't have any success, if maybe at the most playoff win. Being a young team in the playoffs is very, very tough because other teams, they've been through it. They know what they're doing. And that might sound really random to you. Like, why does experience matter? Experience matters in everything. Your coach, the way your assistant coaches handle things, but you have to have leaders who can lead by example and telling other players how to best prepare for this grueling series if you're able to stretch it out. And to be honest with you, the Spurs, you expect them to win the first round. You expect them to beat the Suns, Clippers, Trailblazers, or Warriors. But do you expect them? Is it an expectation that they beat the Nuggets? Because that's who the Spurs would play realistically, is the Nuggets. The Nuggets are former champions. They took OKC to Game 7 last year. They are a problem. They are a true contender. A team with no experience in the Spurs, can you really say confidently that they're going to win? Now, I know Wembanyama, generational. Potential to be one of the greatest ever. Potential, of course. And defensively, best player in the world by far. But on the first time that they're in the playoffs, can they really do it? That to me is the narrative. is it in them to make a run this year? We all know they will have success later down the road. But this early, that to me is the biggest question. I think the Spurs are a true wild card. The Nuggets narrative to me is, can they stay healthy? Can they have all their guys and fully be who we know they can be? If we talk about this season, how it's gone, and I know this might sound like a lazy narrative to you. You might be thinking, what do you mean, can they be healthy? I mean, shouldn't they? Well, again, if we evaluate their season and how it's gone, they've dealt with injuries on injuries. Jokic has been injured. Aaron Gordon's had nagging hamstring injuries. Christian Brown has been injured. Payne Watson has been injured. Cam Johnson has been injured. Jonas Valanciunas has been injured. Do you guys get where I'm going here? I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory. They've had injuries that have prevented them from being their full power Nuggets. And their record, while you see, it's a great record, 52-28. Can you imagine it? Nuggets fan especially. If you're a Nuggets fan and you're watching this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. How good would our record be if we were healthy all season? How good would it be? Now, is it unrealistic to be healthy all season? Sure. But it feels like they've been dealing with more injuries than most, right? But they're still really good. So if they can be healthy, right, and actually have all their role players and all their rotation guys in, they're going to make the series against the Spurs and OKC cinema. Specifically OKC, if they do get past the Spurs, I think that is going to be insane. Honestly, if they could just be healthy, not deal with any injuries, we know that they're capable of winning a championship. They've done it before, and they can do it again. I'm not saying they will, and that's not my prediction. But if they can be healthy, I think they'll feel pretty good about their chances. Okay, dark horses here. So the Lakers is a weird one because, again, they're without Luka and AR. Assuming they are without Luka and AR the entire first round, the narrative is simple. How far back in time can LeBron go to manage this one? That's as simple as it'll be, right? If LeBron can turn back time and be even 80% of what he was or 70% of what he was, I would say they got a good shot. But the reality is LeBron's 41. So if Luka and AR can't come back, or at least Luka in the first round, then it's over. But how far can LeBron go back in time for this one? The Rockets is pretty straightforward. Honestly, I hate to say it like this, but can they be remotely competitive if they get past the Lakers? That to me is the narrative. So they should beat the Lakers. Absolutely. I'm a Laker fan, and I'll tell you this right now. We should lose without our two best players. It should happen. However, let's say they do, which again they should. Can they even make it remotely competitive against the Thunder? Because honestly, that's what I'm looking at if I'm the GM. I don't have any expectations of them beating the Thunder. I don't think anyone does. But if they can at least show some fight and resilience, and Coach Ime is able to get the most out of these guys, that gives you some hope for the future when you get Fred VanVleet back, when you possibly make other adjustments to your roster and figure things out. But damn, seriously? Can this roster at all compete with the top dogs? How is Amon going to look? How is Sengun going to look? Those are the things that you're thinking about. And honestly, if you're a Rockets fan, I know you have to agree with me on this. Can they be competitive? Can they? You might answer as a Rockets fan, hell no. But let's be honest. Let's be very honest. If you guys got 4-0'd, you would be livid. Whether that's your expectation or not, if you get 4-0 against the Thunder, you would be livid. If you even remotely make this Lakers series close, if for whatever reason this goes to game 6 or 7 against the Lakers without their best two players, you would be livid. So, even though your expectations aren't high, let's be honest. How close can you make it against the Thunder, and how much can you beat the Lakers? That to me is a very simple narrative. Timberwolves narrative, and I'll label it like this. How much of a hero can Anthony Edwards be? How much can he lift this roster? If you ask me, this roster has no business beating the Nuggets. 0. But with a player like Anthony Edwards out, I talked about it a little bit recently. You can't roll out a team like the Timberwolves. When you have an X factor like that, a guy who's able to just turn everything around in an instant, you have to just say, okay, well, let me tune in and eat my popcorn, and how much can he lift this team? The narrative for the Suns, this one's really simple, is how hard can they fight? I mean, they've never had the talent to be a top-seeded team all season, but they've been fighting pretty hard all season. How hard can they fight against the Spurs? You know you want to see Devin Booker have some playoff success. That's your guy. He's your franchise guy. Likely leading to be a lifer if you're him, unless, bearing some trade like Damian Lillard, something like that. He's probably, again, leaning to be a lifer. So how hard can they fight? You don't expect to beat the Spurs, but at the very least, you want to see it to go to game 6 or 7 and see this team have some fight. So pretty straightforward to me. Los Angeles Clippers. How much of a hero can Kawhi be? How does Darius Garland do? You're going against the Thunder if you do make it, unless you get to the 7th seed. So you're going against Thunder Spurs if you do make it. How are our top 2 guys going to do? I think that's the most important thing. You want to see Darius Garland because he's the young guy you traded for after getting away from James Harden. And Kawhi, well, this might be his last year, right? This might be his last year with the Clippers. Trailblazers, it's all about getting experience for this one, right? I don't think there's any big flashy narrative. I think it's as simple as how much experience can they really get. There's a lot of guys on that roster who just need to see what NBA playoff basketball is like. Donovan Clingan, Denny Avdija, Scoot, Shaden is still out, but a lot of young guys on that roster here, like, yeah, let's get this guy some good playoff experience. Granted, you have to, get past the play-in, but even the play-in will be good for them too. Warriors, the narrative is and always will be about Stephen Curry for as long as he's there. This roster is pretty dead in the water, to be honest with you. They're not good. This is not a good basketball team. However, every single Warrior fan knows this, okay? I'm going to say this, and if you're a Warriors fan, if you don't agree with me, I don't know what the hell you're smoking. As long as you have Stephen Curry, as long as he is around, the team is entirely different. They're entirely much more confident. They're entirely much more fun to watch. The aura, the vibe, the feel of the team is just different with Steph around. From when he was gone to when he was back, there's just this fight in them. There's this spark in them that is like, damn, Stephen Curry, that guy is the greatest Warrior of all time. Stephen Curry, that guy gives me hope. Now, do you hope to make any, run in the playoffs? Honestly, you might because you're a fan, but it's not realistic. What I will say is the vibes are different and it's a lot more fun when Stephen Curry is around and just competitive, honestly. Let me know what you guys think, though. I really appreciate you guys for watching. What do you think your narratives are for your favorite team or a team that you're watching closely because you like watching them? As always, though, I really appreciate you guys for watching. Feel free to like, subscribe. It goes a long way to over the channel. This is I'll Even Different. All we've been different. And we out.